This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another edition of the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience. I am Steve Riddle, back again for another go-round, and today I'm continuing my journey through the films of one Mr. Don Bluth. Of course, you've already done his first two films, The Secret of Nim and An American Tail, which I still, I've mentioned is one of my favorite films of all time. I still love to this day, and now we're going to go to his third film, which is another film that I always loved when I was little, and this is a big one because this is actually the last film that he did where he was the sole director. Starting with our next film, he would my apologies. The next film, I believe, is his last like solo. Actually, no, it's not actually. I'm just kind of going through everything, and I thought for sure that this film was his last as a solo director, but it's actually not. It's not for a while, but we got some time before we get to there. But right now, like I said, we're going back to his third film overall, and like I said, another one of my favorite films of all time, and that is The Land Before Time. This was released on November 18th, 1988. Budget of $12.3 million to a box office of $84.5. So again, very good return there. Starring Pat Hingle, Helen Shaver, Gabriel Damon, Bill Erwin, Candace Hutson, Brooke Byers, Judith Barcy, and Will Ryan. So a couple of unknowns, kind of fairly unknowns there. The film follows a group of young dinosaurs who are separated from their herds, and they must traverse the land to find the mysterious Great Valley, all the while on the hunt, being hunted by a sharp tooth. So that's your kind of synopsis there. As I usually do, I will start off here with the three films that did work. Three things that worked and the three things that didn't work. So we'll start with the three things that did work. So number one, I thought it was really smart, given that this obviously is garnered towards children. They're obviously not going to know the technical names of each of these dinosaurs. So kind of naming them after their like significant features. So like Littlefoot, who is of course a Apatosaurus, so is known as a long neck because of his long neck. You have the Triceratops is called a three-horn. You have Ducky, who's called a big mouth. Petrie, who's called just a flyer, and then Spike, who's just called a spike. So again, and then obviously the T-Rex called the sharp tooth, and again, I thought that was pretty smart because again, little kids are not going to know what these dinosaurs are actually called. So to give them kind of something to go by their like main features, I thought was really, really a smart move. And I think we kind of see that later in when Disney does Dinosaur. They try to go more technical on some of those dinosaurs, and I think it did kind of backfire a little bit on them. So again, smart move by Bluth with the direction of how he wanted these dinos to be known as. Number two, the narration that we hear throughout the film, I thought was really a good note there, because it kind of helps move things along. And there's a lot to take in here. I mean, there's these young dinos go through a lot. I mean, we see if they're in the midst of a famine, then we see an earthquake. When that's because it was during the time when the continents collided, and seeing them get separated from their herds, and having the narrator kind of be the the exposition of everything, I thought was a nice little touch there, and a good testament to Pat Hingle, who voices the who voiced the narrator. Who also did Rooter, the old dinosaur that Littlefoot meets up with after after his mom dies, and I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, because these obviously these dinosaurs are going to go on a pretty long journey, and having that narrator, I think, helps with that, like I said, that exposition. So get on that. And then number 3, I mentioned in the last film that you could tell Don Bluth took some things that he learned from Disney and brought them into these films here. Like, in the last film when he made American Tail pretty much a musical, and here the concept of a major parent death, because the big kind of moment here is Littlefoot's mother dying. And, it's funny, we talk about great, when we think of like animated parent deaths, we always think of Bambi's mom and Mufasa, but Littlefoot's mom is up there as well. I mean, and she kind of, is probably one of the more heartbreaking ones, because she ends up, she sacrificed her own life to save her son, and, took the brunt of the Sharptooth's attack to save not just her son, but Sarah as well. And it was just one of those, selfless sacrifices that just gets you right in the feels. And I know that when that moment when she dies, I'm sure it probably really caused a lot of crying by kids when they were watching this. So as we all know, nothing can really make your main character sympathetic by giving him a dead parent, and Bluth learned that from Disney very well. So kudos to him for that. And then one extra note here. I love the journey these 5 young dinos take, because one of the things that they kind of put on early is that the herds all kind of stay to themselves, like they don't interact with each other. And that's when at one point early on, when Littlefoot and Sarah are playing with each other, Sarah's father makes a point to say we three horns never play with long necks, and Littlefoot almost kind of challenges the status quo, because he's like, why do we have to be separated? And his mom's kind of tells him like, oh, because it's just the way it's been. And Littlefoot's like, well, kind of questions it. And to see these 5 different dinosaurs come together, and knowing that they can only rely on each other to A, get to the Great Valley, and B, survive the Sharptooth, I think was really, really well thought, because we do see a couple of times where they almost split up, particularly when the tension between Littlefoot and Sarah culminates and they have their little fight. But then they, like I said, they come together and finally, take out the Sharptooth, and then find their way to the Great Valley. I thought was, again, really well done, and great storytelling there by Bluth. Now we'll go to the 3 things that didn't work. Number 1, right off the bat, it's hard to feel bad for Sarah. I mean, she is, she's been, again, just kind of conditioned to feel superior to the long, her and her herd are the superior, species, and she constantly, taunts Littlefoot and everyone else, and there's also, like I said, the moment before she and Littlefoot fight, she even calls his mom a stupid long neck, and it's like, that stupid long neck saved your life, girl. And at the very end, and then there's that moment where the 4 of them get stuck in the tar pits, and then they make their little makeshift monster there to scare off those headbutting dinosaurs to save Sarah, and then kind of scare her, and then Sarah just kind of walks away, and then starts to get upset that she got played like that. Again, it's hard to feel bad for her, because it's kind of like, well, you did kind of have that coming. And she does get a little turn at the end there where she helps them take out the Sharptooth, but again, it's just hard to really feel sorry for her and to sympathize with her, because of how much of a bully she's been throughout this film. So have that. Number 2, convenient mother appearances are convenient, as I like to say, because you have the 2 moments where Littlefoot's staring into the little puddle there with the tree star, and he hears his mother's voice tell him the way to get to the Great Valley, which is to he has to follow the Great Circle, aka the sun, and he's got to pass the rock that looks like a long neck, and then the mountains that burn, aka the volcanoes. And then we don't see it again until the very end, when after they beat the Sharptooth, Littlefoot is at the point where he's like, he'll never get there, and then she appears as a cloud and pretty much points him in the right direction, and then when he catches up to her, lo and behold, there's the Great Valley. So, maybe could have done a little bit better on that. I mean, it's a minor nitpick, but again, it's just like, it was a little too convenient for this for this journey to end. So, in my opinion, and number 3, kind of similar to American Tail, this felt like such a definitive end that we didn't really need a sequel. And not only did we get a sequel, we actually got a grand total of 13 direct-to-video sequels, which, that's a lot. And, Don Bluth had no affiliation with any of them, nor did they have affiliation with the TV series A Land Before Time, which came out in 2007. And it's just, again, it's just, if you want to do one sequel, fine, but to go through and do like, all these sequels, I mean, they went up the way. The last sequel came out in 2016, and it was the 14th film in the series. And by that point, it's kind of like, how much more can you mine out of this franchise? I mean, again, if you want to do the one where they're actually in which the first sequel they did was 94, was the Great Valley Adventure, where they where we get introduced to the baby Sharptooth Chomper. If you want to do that, that's fine, because you can establish something within them living in the Great Valley. But then after that, it becomes just pretty much a cash grab, and it just doesn't work for me. So I think it definitely kind of wore itself out over time, and the sequels definitely do not hold up as well to this one, to this one at least. So now we go to my awards here. So my MVP of the film, I think I have to give it to Judith Barcy, who voices Ducky. She really does a good job in bringing some, a sense of innocence to that character. And, she's, Ducky's an interesting kind of, companion in that, she seems like she's kind of annoying, but at the same time, she's very, she cares a lot, and she obviously forms this, sibling bond with Spike, and I think a lot of that is thanks to Judith Barcy's, work here as Ducky. And I think, I'll talk about her more in the next film, because that's where she really stands out, but she does it, she's really good in this film. My favorite character, though, it's a tie between Spike and Petrie. Spike's just kind of this, Stegosaurus who's just, along for the ride. He's always, kind of, he doesn't talk. He just offers grunts, but he's always, following, whoever's, in charge, and he's always there to help when needed. And then Petrie's journey here, because when we meet him, he's having a hard time flying for the first time, and then, at the very end, when he finally, when they're fighting the Sharptooth and he finally can fly, it's a great moment there, and you're like so happy for him, and they both provide some really good levity and comedy throughout the film. So I think so I kind of have to go co-MVP for them, and then my co-favorite characters for them. And then my least favorite character is again going to be Sarah, just because of again how much of a bully she is throughout the film, and doesn't fully earn the turn there at the end when she helps them take out the Sharptooth at the end. So I have to say that. Favorite scene, again, a lot of really good scenes in this film. But I think I have to go with when Littlefoot's mother and the Sharptooth are fighting, and that coincides as well with the Earth Shake, as it's called. Littlefoot's mother does a great job at fighting off the Sharptooth, but then there's that moment where he jumps on her back and then like bites at her, and you see like the shadows of it. And then there's that one point where the Earth kind of splits apart, and the Sharptooth and the Littlefoot and Sarah fall into the chasm, and at that point, Littlefoot's mother's ready to give up, but when she hears that her son's in trouble, she, wills up that last bit of strength to take out the Sharptooth and then save both Littlefoot and Sarah. So, and then that kind of, like I said, leads into the full on earthquake where the herds are split up, and it's just an insane kind of sequence there, because you got this big fight, you got Littlefoot's mom making the save, and then you have this the earth being split apart and all these herds being separated, and it's a lot to take in, but it's again just flows very well throughout the course of that kind of 5-10 minutes. So again, well done by Bluth for for that. And then final grade, I thought again this held up very well. I haven't seen it in such a long time, much like American Tail, and I think it still holds up very well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of keep track of my grades throughout this, when I'm going through all these films, because I might do a final ranking at the end. So to this point, I gave Secret of NIMH, I gave that an 8. And then I gave an American Tail a 9.5. And for this film, I'm actually going to go a 9. Again, not quite perfect, and I don't think it matches up to American Tail that by that much, but it's still a really great film. And Don Bluth has now had a 1-2 punch here of 2 great films, which I think he needed, because we're only this came out in 88, and then we know a year later in 89 is when Disney releases The Little Mermaid and begins the Disney Renaissance. So for this little bit of stretch here, Don Bluth may have had the advantage in terms of the animation companies, even though Disney's most recent film that kind of opposed this, Oliver and Company, it wasn't that bad either, but it was a really good time to be a young kid with all these really good animated films coming out. So kudos to both Disney and to Bluth for that. But now we'll see how the 90s hold up for Don Bluth, as I know, like I said, our next film, we kick out the 90s, and we kick off actually, no, we don't. I thought the next film came out in 90. It actually comes out in 89, but it's another one of my all-time favorite films. And this one I'm really interested to see if it holds up as well as the other ones here. And that is, of course, All Dogs Go to Heaven. So I'm looking forward to that. So that should be coming out here in the next 2 weeks, hopefully. But with that, that's going to do it for me for this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for continuing to support us here on this feed and all of our other feeds. I know we got a great theme week coming up next week, because we are about a week away from WrestleMania here in Las Vegas, and I know over at North South Connection they're going to be doing a lot kind of final WrestleMania pieces to kind of do that final build. So keep on the lookout for that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it. And again, keep on listening. But with that, I am Steve Riddle. This has been the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience, and we'll see you next time.